Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's episode. I am extra excited to share today's episode with you for several reasons. The first is we're going to talk about how you upper limit yourself. The term upper limit was coined by Gay Hendricks in his book, The Big Leap. And we spent 4 episodes in the inner circle talking about and working through all of the parts of The Big Leap, because I had all of the inner circle mastermind members get the book, because I wanted to make sure we were building a business that was sustainable around a zone of genius or something that's in alignment with who they are. I shared some of that work in the inner circle membership. Doug and I actually worked through our own personal big leaps and working through some of our upper limits. And it was very insightful. It was very useful. And if you're not already in the inner circle, episodes 9, 10, 11, and 12 in the Inner Circle Membership podcast is us going through that book. This has been a game changer for me. The Big Leap is a book I did read years ago, and you'll hear about this in the interview. And it didn't land at the time. I got a little bit out of it. I was kind of inspired, but this time it's like life-changing. It's like I can't even tell you. So if you've read the book before and it hasn't been life-changing, now may be a time to revisit that. So I do want to link that if you like the book, if you've read it, or if you're reading it and you want a little bit more on how to work through it, we did do 4 episodes within the Inner Circle membership podcast, and the link to the Inner Circle is in the show notes. As it is always, it's a 7-day free trial. It's $9.99 after that. And I invite you, if you're a fan and want to continue the conversation, whether it be this show or a previous show or a concern you have or a request that you have about more information, the Inner Circle is the place to do it. And that's jjflazanes.com/inner circle. I also, because I've been cleaning out the office a little bit and going through some of the swag bag items that I've given away in previous events, because I'm not doing another live event this year, I wanted to give it to you guys. So I don't know if you've heard, but I'm doing a swag bag giveaway contest. And you can go to jjflazanes.com/swag bag. I believe there are 16 or 17 different items that will be sent to you. There will be 5 winners, and you can check out all the different companies. I'll do a little bit more about it as the month goes on, and I'll talk about it in the Manifestation Challenge group. But for those of you that aren't a part of any of my Facebook groups or you're not on the email list, I will tell you there's a lot of really great immunity building products. Most of them are supplements of some kind, from Cold Be Gone to Energy Bits to Thrive Probiotics. So we have a lot of great products for you that you can use right now to help yourself feel calmer, more secure, more relaxed in your immunity. We also have Zatique Naturals actually also has given us black seed oil. It's such a great antioxidant to boost your immunity. So like I said, there's just a bunch of amazing gifts in this bag. So please check out jjflazanes.com/swag bag to enter. The contest will end April 30th, and I will announce the winners, 5 of them, on May 1st in the 30-Day Manifestation Challenge Facebook group. So if you're a winner, I'll announce it there. And then, of course, we'll email those of you that have won. So jjflazanes.com/swag bag. One more quick announcement, because I only made this announcement on an email. I've been asked to do a webinar for 1440 Multiversity, and we are doing that on Wednesday, April 22nd. It is the Mind, Body, Soul Immunity Powerhouse, and it'll be 90 minutes, and you can register at 1440.tv. Again, that's 1440.tv. I will also put a link to that in the show notes as well. It is my distinct pleasure today to bring you Gay Hendricks to talk about the Big Leap and how we upper limit ourselves. Another way to think about the word upper limit is also how you self-sabotage. Gay Hendricks has been a leader in the field of relationship transformation and body-mind transformation for more than 45 years. After earning his Ph.D. from Stanford in 1974, Gay served as professor of counseling psychology at the University of Colorado for 21 years. He has written more than 40 books, including bestsellers such as 5 Wishes, The Big Leap, Conscious Loving and Conscious Loving Ever After, the last two co-authored with his co-author and mate for more than 35 years, Dr. Kathlyn Hendricks. And actually, Katie will be on next week. His latest book, The Joy of Genius, shows how to eliminate negative thinking and bring forth true creativity. Gay has appeared on more than 500 radio and television shows, including Oprah, CNN, CNBC, 48 Hours, and others. If you're just tuning into the podcast, or if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, I have the distinct honor and pleasure today to interview Gay Hendricks. For those of you that are in my inner circle, you have been embedded in The Big Leap for about a month now. You've been hearing every section as Doug and I have been going through it. For me, it's the second time. For him, it's the first time. And if you're not, I invite you to come join us in this conversation, because for those of you that have read this book before, I read it a couple of years ago. I'm going to say 2017. That's when there was a buzz around it. And I know you published it in 2009, I believe. And so I'd only heard about it in 2017. And I remember reading it and feeling a call to make a big leap myself, but not actually taking the lessons from the book. So fast forward, we've been connected through a mutual friend. And I'm like, well, let's read the book again. And so I start to read the book, and now it's like mind blown and divine timing. This was the right time for me to really absorb your teachings, to absorb this concept, and to propel forward with it, and to take my big leap into another level. So thank you, Gay, for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, JJ. It's really great to be with you.
So I know you've written books before this, and you've written books after this, and we'll be with Katie and Doug, my other and your other, to do Conscious Loving in a future show. So I know there's been books before and after this, but let's talk about what got you to your big leap to write this book. I'd heard in the book with your granddaughter, who could articulate very clearly what the big leap meant to another 12-year-old, and that you had been talking about this in your family life for so long. Like, what was your journey to creating this body of work?
Well, it was a personal discovery that I made. Not long after I got my Ph.D. in counseling psychology, I was working at Stanford there, where I'd gotten my Ph.D., and I had a job there for a year as a research psychologist before I went off and started my career at the University of Colorado with the counseling psychology department there. But in those days, I was working as a research psychologist, and one day I was feeling really good about the way things were going and the way the work was going and everything. And then in the middle of feeling good, I started having a lot of worry thoughts about my daughter up in my head. And she was little at the time. She was right around the first grade, and the summer between kindergarten and first grade. And she was going to a sleepover camp for the first time with this group that she belonged to. And so it was only about 10 miles outside of town where we live, but it was the first time she'd been away from home, and I was nervous about that. But anyway, what happened was I called the camp and said, "How's Amanda doing?" And the director chuckled, and she said, "Well, you're the third parent that's called this morning to find out how their kids are doing." And she said, "What usually happens is they're doing fine, but you're feeling like you're missing them and that they're having a bad time or something like that." And she said, "I can see Amanda out the window right now. She's kicking a soccer ball around with a bunch of other girls. So there's nothing going on with her. So how are you feeling?" And so I said, "Oh, okay." So it came to roost back on me, and I realized that I was feeling really good. And then I brought myself down by dialing up these worry thoughts about my daughter. And that became my first little moment where I observed the upper limit problem, where the upper limit problem basically is a way of sabotaging ourselves when we start feeling better or doing better than we've been doing before. It excites some fears inside ourselves when we break through into a new dimension. And then oftentimes those fears cause us to pull back and get ourselves back to where we were before. And so that, in a nutshell, was my first moment of seeing the upper limit problem. Then what happened, it was in those days, it was just when Silicon Valley was getting underway. And so there were all these new companies around, like Hewlett-Packard and all the companies that have become huge nowadays. And I worked with a lot of those executives because the counseling center that I was working in there at Stanford, a lot of the people would come over from those big firms for sessions. And so I began to try out this idea on my clients. I began to ask them, when they messed up, what had happened just before that? Had they had some kind of breakthrough to a new level? And one thing after the other, they kept telling me, and that is that they would have a breakthrough at work. So something would be going great at work. Then they'd go home that night and get into a big argument with their partner. So things like that kept happening. And then that's how I spent my 1990s, was doing a lot of research on the Big Leap. And then early in the new century, I got around to writing the book.
So was it a 10-year project of really testing your theory and uncovering sort of a structure?
Yes. Once I started seeing the upper limit problem, I started to ask myself, why is this happening? What causes it? And that's when I began to discover those fears that are underneath. You see, so it's a little bit different for everybody, but there's only a few fears that cause people to trigger their upper limits. One of them is a fear that they're fundamentally not deserving of love or good times or abundance. They feel like there's something fundamentally flawed about themselves that they feel shame about. And so if they start to have good things happening, up comes that fear. Oh, you're not worthwhile, you're not worthy, you don't deserve this kind of success or love. And then that's when they have an accident or mess up or start an argument or do something that pulls themselves back down beneath their upper limit.
My very first show was called Fit to Love, and it was the idea of whatever we do in life, it's not necessarily about the what we're doing, it's the how we're doing it. It's the energy underneath something. And there was something about the fitness industry that I didn't like the entire time I was in it. The more science I learned, the more psychology I learned, the more I learned about the human body and just what we're capable of, I could always feel this level of, you either do it because you love and respect yourself, which is where I was coming from, or you're doing it from a place of shaming yourself or blaming yourself. And of course, those are the people that never seem to break through to get their goals met, because they would always underneath it would have an energy of, I'm doing this because I don't like myself. I'm doing this because I hate myself. I'm doing this because if I don't do this, I won't have love. And so Fit to Love became my first show, but my flagship show is actually called Spirit, Purpose, and Energy, where I took a big leap in a way to stand out in the world and say, I'm going to teach you law of attraction. I don't have a degree in law of attraction. Don't know if there's such a thing as a degree in law of attraction, but I've been studying it for so long. I feel like I have a really good handle on it, and I can answer most questions from that point of view. And I understand it at a level of science, not just of intuition. And so everything for me is a filter through how it aligns and how it complements, to me, law of attraction, which to me, again, is a law and is science. It's physics. And when I'm reading The Big Leap and thinking, okay, this is a structure. I feel like that our upper limit is what in law of attraction would be called that point where you can't feel more love and joy, where you click into some negative belief or feeling. But for a lot of people who teach law of attraction or follow it, the lessons are, well, just do something that feels better. And for a lot of people, that's not enough information, and that's not a way to expand to the next level. And what I love about The Big Leap is literally you have a structure of 4 questions, 4 zones, ways in which we limit ourselves. It's very practical to help get from where you are. Here's how much joy and love and abundance and success I can handle right now, to, well, why can't I feel happier? Why can't I practice this more? Why can't I be in a higher vibrating space? Well, look at these things so that you can expand to the next level. And one of the questions that came up for one of my mastermind members and inner circle members was, do we keep changing or growing into or expanding into another or deeper part of our zone of genius?
Yes. These days, interestingly enough, I've quit using the term zone of genius, and I've started using the term genius spiral, because a zone makes it sound like it's something that's contained, whereas a spiral has an open-ended quality. And interestingly enough, this is the 40th anniversary of when I met my wife, Katie. And so 40 years ago, we met and fell in love, and then we got married, and we had our own private wedding on a mountaintop, and just the 2 of us. And as we were speaking our vows to each other, we saw this beautiful hawk flying in a spiral above our heads. And as we delivered our vows to each other, all of a sudden Katie said, "Oh, look up now." And I looked up, and there was a second hawk had joined the first hawk, and they were flying around up into the sky in these ever widening spirals. And I was so touched by that image, I've never forgot it. And suddenly it came to me, the thing that I wanted to go beyond the zone of genius, was the genius spiral, because it's open-ended and it never has an encapsulated quality like a zone. And so now I talk about how to get on the genius spiral. In our workshops, we talk about the how of consciousness. How do you actually do these things in a very practical way? Well, one thing that's super important, no matter where you are on the scale of coming out of your zone of incompetence and then into your competence and then excellence and then in genius, wherever you are in there, you're always in the process of letting go of control. That is one of the most fundamental important processes in life, is to let go of trying to control things that you don't have any control over anyway. You know, like for example, whether people like you or not is totally outside your control. Whether you do something nice for somebody that may result in them liking you, that's within your control. And so many people get caught up in worrying and thinking about things that are not within their control that they forget to put their attention on exactly what can be done right now. And so that's what I try to do in the Big Leap, is to make sure everybody had a toolkit and a manual for how to actually transcend their upper limit and stabilize at a higher zone. Interestingly enough, I just got the galley proofs today for my new book. It's a sequel to the Big Leap that's coming out in May. It's called Conscious Luck. And it's all about 8 secrets for intentionally changing your fortune. And people can go read about it. The Amazon page and other bookseller pages is already up for pre-order, so you can go look at what the book's about. But just if I can give you a tiny taste of it, it's all about the process of finding out what the things are for you that increase your luck factor. And we have 8 things in the book that we know now that improve the quality of luck. And you need to just figure out which pathway you want. You can certainly use all 8 of them, but most of us will be drawn to 1 or 2 pathways. And I'm very excited about it because we've had, you know, like you said, it took me about 10 years to research the ideas in the Big Leap. And then it's taken me about 10 years now to figure out the dynamics of conscious luck. And so I'm very excited to have that out in May. And I'm sure we'll get back in touch and have a conversation about that then.
Okay, you heard it here. First, we're going to do conscious loving before May, and then in May we can help with your book launch, definitely, because I have made it a mandatory. I would have given it to them as a gift, but we have our first mastermind meeting at the end of March in person, and I said that'll be too late. You have to get it now. So I've been doing the service of reading it and then recording a show about it, reading it and recording a show about it for people to start using these practices as we dive into honing, because it's taken me my whole time in business to get to the place where I've married all of the things that I feel like I'm good at and what I stand for, which is, you know, I only launched this mastermind recently because for a long time I was a mind, body, soul, connecting all the pieces. I'm not just going to do exercise. That's my zone of excellence, but it isn't my zone of genius, because we have to talk about why you do or don't do what you do, why you're sabotaging your health in the first place, or don't love yourself enough to take care of yourself. That was something that I had to, again, grow into and to step into. And so the first half of the year is going to be on working the Big Leap. And I'd love the second half of the year to be working on the conscious luck. So of course, yes, I would love to have you back and to talk about that, to support your launch. And of course, to have everyone in my community buy that book, buy both books and get involved with you, come to a workshop, join my inner circle where we're talking about it more there. You know, one of the things that I think is coming up for some of the people in my groups is, well, what if I am afraid to step into my zone of genius because I know that I can pay the bills with my zone of excellence, or I have been living in my zone of competence, so can't I just go to my zone of excellence next to make some money to fund my zone of genius? So what would you say to that?
Well, first of all, there's absolutely nothing wrong with operating in your zone of excellence. Do that as long as you comfortably can. And I say comfortably because most people find at a certain point in their zone of genius, it begins to feel limited. It begins to feel like there's something you're missing. And that something, in my opinion, is your genius. And so you're always being called to open up more and more and more of a conversation with your genius. I've found that the best way to move from your zone of excellence to your zone of genius is not like jumping out of an airplane with a parachute on, but it's by beginning to do 10 minutes a day of your genius material in addition to whatever you're doing on the excellence front. Everybody can get 10 minutes, can set aside 10 minutes to do their genius. And then pretty soon that becomes addictive and you want to do it for 20 minutes and then you want to do it for 30 minutes. And then one day, like I did back in the 90s, let's see, was it 1991 or two? Yeah, about 30 years ago now, I kind of said to myself, okay, I'm wanting now to go from using myself 10% of my time in my genius, I want to go to 30%. And so I worked on that for a couple of years. And then I got that accomplished. Now I want to spend 50% of my time in my genius. And I worked on that for a couple of years. Then I said 70%. But now, for the last 20 years, I've been 90% of my time on the genius spiral and then 10% of my time getting around from place to place. But I just don't do stuff anymore that's not on my genius spiral.
Definitely been feeling that for years. I have clients that I've had since before I started my podcast. My podcast was my exercise in giving myself an outlet to explore how I can show up in the world the best. What do people respond to? What feels the best for me? Where is there a flow, a natural flow, and a momentum that gets created? And when I made the show, I put, my exercise and the cooking and the wellness and the health stuff and the behavioral stuff. And then I kind of snuck in the law of attraction stuff to give myself permission to step into that. And 2 years after I started that show, or 3 years, I decided to step out into what I thought was the next step for me, which was to put on an event where I was kind of saying, I'm going to help you work these practices that I'm talking about on the show. And so when it comes to the zone of genius, I know it speaks to me loudly. It spoke to me when I read it back in 2017, but I was already doing something unknown, saying, I'm going to step out and be this guide. I'm going to be this practitioner, if you will, of helping you to actually do these exercises that we talk about on the show all the time, because you're not going to do it listening to a podcast. You have to show up and create the space to work on your life instead of just being in your life. And so for me, this go around, because back then I was in a relationship where I was learning my lessons. And then that relationship sort of had its contract expire. And now I'm in a relationship where my trajectory looks like this. It's straight up. It's as big as I can go. It's the most amount of support, love, and cheerleader I can get, which is what I'm imagining that you and Katie have based on the book and how you sort of worked out your stuff before you guys met. And then the last 40 years, congratulations, that's amazing, have been being lucky and thankful every single day that you're together. But you wouldn't have been able to be there without the lessons prior to that. You had to work that out somehow. And I think along this path, some people are wondering, like I said, should I be in a different place, or why am I? And I love what you said about the indication of something inside of you calling to you, saying it's time for something more. There's this internal knowing that you're not doing what you love, or you're a little bored, or you're ready for the next level. So with that, I wanted to ask you, just because I was, I get hits of like intuition, and not that I'm right, I'm just curious. Do you happen to know, and if you don't, it's totally okay. Do you happen to know your astrological stuff?
Well, I know that I'm an Aquarius, and I know that I was born at 4:30 a.m. That's about it, except I'll tell you a funny thing. A famous astrologer came up to me at a party way, way, way back a long time ago. I think it was in the 1970s. And I got into a conversation with him, and he said a couple of things. He said, oh, you know what? You would do well in a place in the world where there's both mountains and ocean. And I said, oh, really? Because I was in Colorado at the time. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, oh, your astrological type really thrives in that area. And I said, well, what part of the world has oceans and mountains? And he said, oh, like Big Sur, California, or Ojai. Or
Yeah.
At the time, I hadn't heard of Ojai, but I'd heard of Big Sur. But so it's interesting that I should end up here many years later.
I want to talk a little bit about, for those that haven't read the book yet, and again, I purposely am not having you reiterate the book because I want everyone to read the book or listen to the book. It's not even a small suggestion. It's a very strong, please get the book. And if you've already read the book and it didn't resonate with you and it didn't change your life the first time, maybe it's time to pick it up again. That's what's happened to me. But I do want people to come away with, and we talked about zone of genius and now the genius spiral, which I love. Because again, I don't like to feel confined either. Like there's only this section that I have to be in, and I can't grow any further. I can't grow past that. Let's talk about how we upper limit ourselves. And again, the upper limit just means we're not allowing in more love, joy, success, and abundance. It's where we stop ourselves. But what are some of the indications of upper limiting?
Some people upper limit themselves by worrying. That's a common upper limit. They get to feeling good and then evoke something they need to worry about. And in life, there's always something you can worry about. But most of the time, people are worrying about things that they have absolutely no control over. And it's just they're using it as an upper limit to shut themselves down. A second way is to have illness or accident. That's a common upper limit. So you get to feeling really good and you don't know how to maintain that good feeling, so you trip and fall, or you start an argument is another common one. I would say in relationships, that's the most common upper limit, is one person or the other has good feeling for a while and then can't handle it and so starts criticizing the other person. That was one of my favorite ones when I first began to notice this many years ago in myself. Oh, by the way, I wanted to clarify something. Katie and I didn't work out all our stuff before we got together. We had plenty of stuff to work out the first couple of years of our relationship. So I wanted to make sure that you didn't think we were superhuman or anything. I met Katie when I was 34. And so between 17, when I fell in love for the first time with my high school girlfriend, and 34, I think I made just about every relationship mistake that was possible to make, which is probably a good thing now because I can recognize them in other people and have compassion for them.
Well, thank you for saying that. I do appreciate that because I often think I process a lot on my own show and with my groups, and they always say, well, we really love that you do that. It shows us that you're human and that we get to come along the journey and we feel closer to you. And I think anyone that thinks they have it all together or all worked out all the time is full of crap. And you do say it in the book that we will have this patterning of upper limiting at every level of expansion. It's just to notice it and to be light with it, and then to use the tools that you give in the book and any other tools someone else would use to transform it, transcend it, and move on. But it's not to be like, oh my God, this bad thing happened to me and I can't get past this. It's like, here are the tools. Just use the tools, keep expanding. Once you practice it, just like exercise, you get better at it and it gets more fun. And I think that the momentum created from allowing in more joy, love, and abundance starts to make you realize that why would I spend more time focusing on these upper limit behaviors when it's so great over here? I want to stay over here more, right?
One thing I do sometimes at our seminars is I'll put people in a meditative state and then I'll ask them a series of questions, like to pick a percentage, like, would you be willing to feel good in your body and feel a clear flow of love 10% of the time, and find out where they are with that, and then 50% of the time, 100% of the time, because what's happening is life is a constantly expanding opportunity to experience more and more love, more and more creativity, more and more abundance. I really put a lot of our attention here on creativity, though, because if you harness the power of your own creativity, your natural organic creativity, you have this resource in there that's always on. Once you learn how to treasure it and open up to the flow of it, it's kind of like riding a bicycle. It's a little tricky at first, but after a while you can cruise down the road without thinking about it very much. And so that's what happens to people that work through our program, is that they feel, it feels new at first, but then as they integrate more and more love and positive energy in their life, it's much easier to stay balanced and to maintain that state in ordinary life.
Are there any practices? It sounds like meditation is one of them, but you did talk about it in the book, like that you did it 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night. Are there any other practices that you have since incorporated in being able to expand to that next level for yourself?
Yes, we teach a number of techniques, but a couple of them that I'd like to share with you now is we teach a very body-centered technique. I have a book called The 10-Second Miracle. And so we have a 10-second miracle breathing program that only takes 30 seconds. And if you would like, I would like to demonstrate it for you.
Yes.
What you do is you take 3 easy breaths that last 10 seconds or longer, all the way in and all the way out. In other words, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And we ask you to keep those breaths connected for a particular reason I'll explain in a moment. So in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we ask people to do that 3 cycles, 3 10-second miracles. And here's the science behind it. I think you'll appreciate it. It only takes about 3 easy, slow breaths to quiet your body's stress chemistry. Your body's stress chemistry doesn't get produced when your breathing is slowed down to an easy pace. And interestingly enough, the reason we ask you to keep it connected is one of the symptoms of fight or flight breathing is people hold their breath at the top. Like if somebody startles you, what do? You go, and that locks in that. So we ask people to breathe right over through that and connect up those 3 easy breaths that take 10 seconds. What that does, you'll have to just try it sometime when you're feeling a little rattled or off-centered. Within just 30 seconds, it snaps things back into focus. Your body feels quieter, your brain feels sharper. So that's one thing that I highly recommend that people do, especially, well, I mentioned if you're feeling off center for sure, but if you catch yourself right in the middle of an upper limit where you identify one of those fears I'm talking about, like the fear of fundamentally being something wrong with you, or another one that's very popular is the fear of outshining other people, where you feel like that if you really let yourself shine to your fullest, it will somehow detract from other people. But I'm here to tell you that after 33 trips around the world teaching this over the past 40 years, I can tell you that nobody ever gets threatened by your expansion into your genius. It inspires other people to expand into their genius. So I don't want anybody out there ever holding themselves back because it'll make somebody else feel bad. Go ahead, let yourself shine and let that light penetrate other people.
Thank you for that. I think everyone can implement that right now. And if you were listening while you're driving or exercising, you could still be doing that. You know, if you're not watching this video, you can still be doing that. One of the things that, as I go through working with people on their zone of genius in preparation for today's conversation and my own about, and then my partner, is I'm wondering if you believe or think or have found over the course of your years of doing this, that I'm finding that I think a lot of people's zone of genius has something to do with helping other people.
Yes.
And it becomes the delivery method in which they do that, the fine tuning of what specific ways. I forget what you said yours was in helping people. It was about bringing them into an awareness.
Part of it has to do with, well, my life purpose is to expand in love, abundance, and creativity every day as I assist others who are interested to do the same. So that's my life over the past 40 years. And I think it's important if you are creating your life purpose to have a life purpose that is beyond yourself. It includes you, but it goes beyond you. So the idea of inspiring other people, I think, is really important. Here's an interesting thing that you might appreciate. One time a guy called me, he was a therapist himself, and he was feeling depressed. And he was sunk down in there. He'd had a relationship breakup and his practice wasn't going very well. And he was just in one of those low moments of his life. And so I talked to him for a while, and I couldn't find any way of helping him lift the depression. And finally, I asked him just out of the blue, did you see anything on your way home tonight or when you were walking up to your apartment? Did you see anything that you could do for somebody else? And he thought for a minute and he said, well, the elderly lady that lives downstairs, the front of her apartment was kind of cruddy looking. Some leaves had blown up on it. And I said, okay, I'll stay right here on the phone. Go down there and sweep it for her. You don't even have to tell her, just do it. And so he disappeared for a while, and I just breathed. And pretty soon he came back, and he sounded like a completely different person. The act of service had popped his cork somehow. So he was, back to breathing again and feeling his normal self. So I think there's a real metaphor in there for all of us, that a lot of times we get very caught up in our own stuff, and somehow it's that act of service that can unleash that in ourselves. Sometimes it goes the other direction. Sometimes people need to go in for a period of deep reflection, though. They've been giving to other people too much. They need to take an hour off and give themselves. Like one of my yoga teachers that I knew from way back, she always said, if I give an hour to myself, I can give the other 23 to others. But if I don't give an hour to myself every day for my own practice, I can't give anything to anybody. And, it's for the same, well, you use your body as a instrument like I do. Like I spend 3 days a week going to the gym and doing resistance training and that kind of thing, because I want that feeling of surging energy through me all the time. I don't want to feel lethargic. We say every breath you take after the age of 50 is a breath of stagnation or a breath of creativity. Pick one. Do you want to be stagnant or do you want to be creative? And so it's a choice every moment, especially as you move on later in life.
I love that. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. And in terms of this, giving to others, and I agree. It's funny because as I'm working with people too, I see that some people are so into trying to figure out what's wrong with them that I'm like, okay, your purpose cannot be about figuring out what's wrong with you. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's like we have these other habits, but let's put our focus outside of ourselves into why you're here and what your purpose is. But having a purpose, feeling like you're a part of a bigger part of society, that you're a bigger connection to other people, which, when it came down to it, and I'm starting to hear people and help them and help myself and Doug, and we're talking about like, it's really about helping other people, but how, and the unique way that you do it. And what I got to at the end of your book with sort of my own, I guess, zone of genius, articulating that, what I'm different, and it does relate back to childhood, right? To what I didn't get or what I wanted to do or how I wanted to help my family or create connection, is that, and it's funny, I coined myself an empowerment strategist a long time ago. It's not a sexy term. Most people don't understand what it is, but it's so meaningful to me because I empower people and I empower them to believe in possibility. That's it. That's my unique ability, is always finding us. I'm an awesome problem solver. I am great. If I don't have a tool, I'll go get a new tool. Like I just feel like there's an unlimited amount of tools, and then we just pick the right ones for you. But the fact that we believe in ourselves and that we believe in possibility, we believe in change. I think that's my zone of genius. But when I started looking at everybody else's, like with Doug's, I also believe that his zone of genius is in the realm of helping people. Is there anyone whose zone of genius isn't about serving?
Well, I think there are some people that serve in different ways. Like a performer. They may not be actively helping somebody, but they're bringing some new light or life to someone. And I think that really counts. I think, though, that the important thing is for everybody to sit down and have a conversation with themselves, what we call a wonder conversation, where you actually, what is my true genius? So you don't try to get the answer out here. You kind of go hum from inside and feel down in there. It took me an hour, a whole hour of doing that before my purpose became clear. The one I wrote down in The Big Leap about, I expand every day in love, abundance, and creativity. That took me an hour to get to, of just sitting there saying, what really is my purpose in life? What is my genius? What do I most love to do? And after a while, just wondering about that sort of swam up and crystallized. So I don't know if that'll happen for you in 10 seconds or 10 minutes or 10 months, but it's a delicious process to keep going in there and finding more and more about what your own chosen purpose is.
Again, what I love about this structure that you've created that is so brilliant, I don't think the zone of genius was a phrase being used prior to your book, correct?
No, I think I coined that phrase. And now the genius spiral, that's another phrase that I'm putting out there into the world. So I'm glad to see, like on Twitter and things, everybody's got their hashtags about the big leap and upper limit and hashtag zone of genius and things like that. It's very refreshing to come up with something like that in the middle of the night 30 years ago and now have a big conversation about it going on in the world.
It's brilliant. It really, again, I appreciate the structure, which is so funny. You're an Aquarius. I'd love to do your chart just for my own information, because Aquarian is normally about ideas and thoughts and thinking and about futuristic visioning about where we're going as a society and creating that next level, being able to pull back. The genius, if you will, of an Aquarius is really in that idea creation of seeing a trend, seeing a need, part of that leading edge, if you will, of visioning. That's a really strong trait for Aquarians. But sometimes what isn't a strong trait is having a structure. And
yeah,
so what
I know. People have mentioned that before to me. I'm supposed to be a space cadet. I guess I am partly, but I'm an organized one in the sense that as long as I can remember, my mind has always been interested in, how does this work? How does this work? I remember once I was doing a lot of coaching down at Dell Computer with Michael Dell and his executives back during the 90s. And I remember once asking Michael about, and I asked this of a lot of people just to get an idea of how their mind works. I asked them, what was the first Christmas present or holiday present or something, or birthday present you can remember really wanting and thinking, oh, that's cool? And Michael said that the first one he could remember was he wanted to get a calculator, and they were kind of new at the time, I guess, and electronic calculator, but he wasn't interested in calculating. The first thing he did was take it apart to see how it worked. And so I'm like that too. I got to just see what the underlying mechanisms of something are. And so I think that's just one of the gifts my mind has, is I can sort through something very quickly and see, okay, I see the system that's creating that. It's also very useful in the psychotherapy and family therapy trade too, because I've been doing that obviously half my life. And so it's helpful to be able to see the structure of things that causes certain problems in people. That's one of the things I'm most proud of about the Big Leap, is it gave people a structure for how to look at the problem that they'd never realized before.
And also you embodying and anchoring in throughout the entire text to sort of to be easy about it, right? Here's the structure, but be easy about it, and don't take it too seriously, and use the tools and know that this is part of the journey. And I think that's important for people to hear, because again, as people started to read it within my circles and my group, as I was leading them to, get on board with this, because it's really amazing and it'd be great for everybody to read it. They thought, oh, well, what if the fear and the shame of if I'm making the wrong choice? Am I making the wrong choice about living in my zone of excellence because it pays the bills? And I want to go back to what I asked you about. Did you coin that phrase? Because my partner, Doug, who has been in entertainment, has had his own business, has a podcast production company. He would often, never had read your book, would say to people something about zone of genius. Never read the book, didn't even know what that meant, thought he knew what that meant. And the entire time there's been tears, there's been ahas, because he's like, crap, I've been living in my zone of excellence my entire life, and I didn't even know it until now. So now there's a whole new vocabulary for himself, and more of an awareness of, I don't want to be doing that anymore, because there is this worry that happens. There is this lack of really true, I'm going to say, centeredness when you're in, and this is just for him and this is for me, when you're doing something you can get paid well for, you're really good at it, but it's lacking that depth. It's lacking that true bodily sensation of, I'm in alignment. I'm in complete alignment. Everything's firing together. It's not, I'm using a portion of what I'm good at, and the rest of it's sort of dormant over here. I used to say I was an actress first and then a personal trainer. And what I realized early on is that I must be 50% left and right brained, because when I was acting, it was a great outlet for me emotionally to release and experience and have the deliciousness of feeling, of expressing pain and fear and sadness and excitement and joy, all in a container of an acting class or in a play. But I noticed that I was bored sometimes, like I didn't have anything to figure out. And then I became a trainer, and I was so into the science of all the training, thinking, oh my God, where has this science been? I'm smart. I'm really smart. I really get this science. And then realizing that my body felt stagnant. Like, okay, my brain's working really hard, but my body is like, like you need to like do something that connects all these things together. And then realizing, oh, I need to be putting everything together into one thing. And now what I'm doing really is utilizing all that great stuff. So if you haven't read The Big Leap, again, I'm really going to encourage everyone listening, everyone watching, don't even, before this is even over, just make sure you're on your phone or your device, get it. I have it in audio. I have it in the book. You're going to want the book and the audio. I'll tell you why. You're going to want the book because of the darkened, bolded questions. In fact, before we got on this call, I was thinking of Einstein time, which we're not going to talk about. We don't want to confuse everybody. We don't have time for Einstein time right now. Isn't that funny? Is that for my group, I thought, all right, I'm going to put together a worksheet. And I don't know if you have a workbook. I'm not going to tell you that I think you need one, but what I did was take all of your most important questions from each section and literally make like a worksheet. It's a 3-page worksheet of actually going through and answering all the questions you ask in the book. And before
How about sending my assistant a copy sometime, and I'd like to see it.
Okay, I will send it to her. And then you can let me know if I've missed anything important, right? But I didn't fill in because it's literally, you need to have the book to read to clarify each one of the different, like if you don't know what your zone of competence is or your zone of incompetence, the explanation's in the book. It's not, I'm not going to type all that. It's like typing the book up again. But when I was talking about Einstein time, I thought to myself, I just did it like a half an hour ago. And I thought, I don't have time. I have Gay coming on at 1:00. I don't have time to do this. But I was so in flow that I'm like, no, I'm just going to do it right now. And then I finished it like this. And I was like, oh, it's done. I still have a half an hour. Wow. I must be in Einstein time because I was in flow. And all of a sudden and because it would be great preparation for today. So again, my pitch is everybody, first and foremost, get both the book and the audio because you can't take notes while you're driving and you want to be able to look at it. The book is not that long. It's really small and it's a great way to take notes. Now, I want to ask you, I know you're still doing workshops. So let's talk about where people can find more information on attending one of your workshops. And you have the new book coming out and there's other books we're going to talk about. But do you still work with companies still or people independently or privately?
I don't much anymore. No, I do a lot of what we're doing right now. And I'd go out on, big trips if I have a TV show or something like that's in LA. But I've, after 1.2 million frequent flyer miles, I've been resisting doing business travel for the past 10 years or so. So I've been, my wife and I like to go on pleasure trips a couple of times a year, and that satisfies all my need for airplane. But we have people come here twice a year for our big trainings in the winter and summer. We just finished our big winter training, but we have those in the summer and the winter, and also smaller trainings, like my wife is teaching one in Germany in April. Yeah, and we do a lot of work through our e-courses too. In fact, if you go to hendricks.com, HENDRICKS.com, you'll see that as a jumping off place to all of the different things we do. Like we have a number of relationship e-courses that you can take at home, and also other things like on weight loss and things like that. So those can be found also. And we have a nonprofit foundation that does a lot of things in the world that I'll come back on and talk about sometime.
I would love to also promote that. So maybe I can get from your assistant the link for the nonprofit, and I will link everybody in the show notes to hendricks.com, which is where I also did some exploration. When is your next event?
The next big event would be in the summer here in Ojai.
So take a look at hendricks.com and check out the summer big event that he's doing in Ojai. Can I ask you where you hold it?
We have several different places depending on the size. The main place we use is the Ojai Women's Center. It's a really nice place. And there's another nice place for smaller workshops called Healing in America.
Great. Well, and maybe your neighbor soon. And I will tell you, it's a big leap for me to make this leap because, as you just mentioned about airport, like I live 5 minutes from the airport right now, and not that we're traveling all that much, but the thought of being sort of confined 45 minutes away from a major airport or an hour and a half away from LAX, while I have wanted to come there for 20 years and have a place, the big leap is I have to trust that this is what the next level is for me. So I look forward to seeing you at coffee sometime. And we're going to get together to talk with Katie and Doug. So Gay, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time. I'm honored to have you. Please keep up the good work and spreading all your wonderful stuff. Everyone get The Big Leap. Don't wait. Buy it today, read it today, and share with me how you're taking your next big leap and how you're going to go to hendricks.com and see if you can get to one of Gay's events. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, JJ.